So hi everyone, I just want to go over quickly the process of building out a navigation section, a primary navigation section for a website. I realized that in the previous videos I'd skipped over this a little bit, so I think it's worth focusing on a little bit more closely. Okay, so what I have here is on the left, I have an HTML page. I've still got the style sheet connected to it as previously, but I have removed the navigation because I'm going to go over building that out again. And on the right here, I have a view of that web page. So it has the CSS styles applied to it. This one has a garishly yellow background. That's really just to see that, of course, as previously, that we actually have the CSS working, and we've got the styled sort of content area here. What I'm going to do though is put a navigation bar up the top here. So in this video, I'm just going to cover building out the HTML for that and linking between two different pages, just to make that super explicit. And in the next one, what I'll cover is starting to style that navigation section, starting to build it out a little bit. But I just want to show you the process of building out a very simple, very basic navigation section here to begin with. Okay, so let's come back to Visual Studio Code. We know we're in Visual Studio Code on the Mac because it says so up here. It says the word code. And in my homepage, index.html, I'm just going to put in, to begin with, a comment. Okay, so I could just type that in, exclamation mark, and 2 dashes, and you can see that as I do that, code helpfully completes that. Put in a couple of spaces, and in between them, I can start typing out my comment. So again, an HTML comment has this format, looks like that. Close starts with an exclamation mark, 2 dashes, they're just ordinary hyphens. And it ends with 2 hyphens and again a right angle bracket. So unlike an HTML tag proper, this one does not have a closing tag. And the content of it, what I put in here, is ignored by the web browser and by the web server typically as well. Okay, so I'm just going to say primary navigation here. This will be a little bit redundant because the way I'm going to write the code should make that pretty obvious in any case. So to begin with, I'm going to start with the nav element. Okay, so I'll attach a class attribute to this in a bit, but I'm just going to put the basic navigation element in there. Okay, so there it is, and it's code has auto-completed that again. This would work perfectly well visually. It would work just as well if I were to use a different element. If I were to use something like the div element, the division element. Now, div is sort of one of those things that we probably tend to overuse. In fact, there is this term that a lot of web developers, web designers and developers use called div soup, where people just fill up their code with lots and lots of the div element. It is not semantic HTML. It doesn't mean a lot itself. It just means there's a division in the page here, and you can style it and you can use it for all sorts of things. It is very useful, but like lots of useful things, it can be overused, in my opinion. We tend to overuse it. And from an accessibility point of view, it is terrible when it comes to things like navigation. So if we put in, just undo that. So if we put in the navigation element, the nav element here, this is semantic navigation. The web browser and other accessibility tools, screen readers and so on, do understand what the nav element is, what it means. It means, of course, navigation. So, let's put in a couple of links. Now, because this is a navigation element, we want the navigation to be completely consistent throughout the whole website. That's a very, very important user interface, user experience sort of principle. If you make sure that your navigation is consistent, the people visiting, using your website or your web app are not going to get confused. You do not want to confuse your users, all right, your audience. So for that reason, even though we're on the home page here, we're on index.html, we want actually to have a link to that page, so that every page in our site will include a link back to the home page, all right? Just as we have links to all the other pages. What you do not want to do is to just have links to the pages other than the one that you're on. Okay, that makes your navigation inconsistent, and visually as you go between pages, things would appear to jump around. They won't be in the same place, and that's bad. Okay, so for now, I'm just going to put in an A element, an anchor tag. This is just the straightforward one we use for web links. All right, again, not to be confused with the link tag up here, which we use for loading content into a page. Like the link element though, or link tag, we are using this attribute, href, stands for hypertext reference. So I'm going to put href in there. All right, and as I say, I want to link this to, in this case, to itself actually, to the home page. I want to link to the home page. Just close that. And in between, in the middle of this A element, the anchor element, I'm going to put the word home. Pretty self-explanatory. Now, I'm just going to build out one more web page for the time being. Your website for this project will include at least 4 pages ultimately, so I want you to have 4 pages in here when you're done. But for now, we'll just put in 2. Okay, so let's put in again href equals. Okay, so the next page I'm going to build is going to be called the About page. I have information about myself as a designer. And so I'm going to give it a logical name. I'm going to call it about.html. Okay, very clear, very self-explanatory. Always want to be as obvious as we can. I'm going to say about me in the link. So it could just be the word about. I like to be a little bit more specific than that. About me. So this is perfectly functional, just as it is. All right? If I come back to the web browser and refresh that page with a Command R or by hitting that reload button up there, you can see up here we have these 2 links, and it's just using the default styling. Okay, so it has a little underline there. Now, as far as styling goes with CSS, there are some other things we'll need to add in, which I'll come to in a subsequent video. We do actually want to wrap this in another couple of elements, an unordered list element or UL element. And then each link itself we will put inside a list element, an LI element, but we'll come back to that. And that really is largely to give us more control over the display of that navigation. It doesn't really have a lot of semantic content to it, but it does help a lot with moving between narrow and widescreen layouts. Okay, we do generally want to be building out mobile first or small screen first. We'll come to that later. Okay, let's put in a class attribute here. So class equals nav dash primary, we'll call it that. All right. Okay, and in the link here, I will also give it a class attribute to connect it up to a CSS class that I'm defining. And I'm going to call this nav-link. Okay, I could even call it nav-primary link, and so on. All right, and I'm going to copy that attribute and put that there. All right. So my text is wrapping onto the next line. If I make that a little bit wide, you can see that is in fact one line of code there. Let's bring this back to halfway. All right, so we've got links between that will link between two different pages. Now, what I don't have is a second page to link to. All right, I've only got the home page here. So just in the Finder, just looking at my folder structure here, I've got the CSS folder, the images folder, which we haven't used yet, on my home page here. So what I'm going to do is come back to Visual Studio Code, and I'm actually going to duplicate this file. I'm going to choose this option, Save As, or Command-Shift-S, Save As. All right, and it's prompting me to save it in here. I'm just going to call it about.html. Okay. All right, so we've got this new page up here. I'm just going to change the heading here just to make sure that it's absolutely super clear. I'm not going to worry too much about this text down here. I might just say something like this. I'm a visual artist and web designer. All right, so let's zip back to the Finder for a minute, and you can see that we've got two different files. We've got index.html, the home page, and we've got this second page. Now, one thing to notice, and this is very important, that these are at the same level. They're right next to each other, in other words, in the same folder. They're in this session 2 folder, right next to each other. All right. And that explains why when it comes to these links, all right, unlike our link to our CSS here, there's no folder name here. Because they're at the same level, I can just put the file name, and that is sufficient to make a link work. So let's open up the web browser again, open up Safari, click refresh, looks exactly the same. And now I'm just going to click on this About Me link, and you can see that indeed it has taken me to that second page. All right, so that's all good. And because the navigation is the same across both pages, I can just click that home link there and go back to the home page. So as you build out your navigation, make sure that you keep it exactly the same across all of your pages. The easiest way to do that is just to say, build it out on your home page. Let's go opening up index.html again here. And as you build it out, as you make additional links, so say for example, I put in a link here to a contact page, contact.html. I will just give it that same CSS class. Okay, so you can see I've got a third navigation link there. Let's zoom out a little bit to show that that's all in one, in fact, in one line. All right, as I've put in that extra link, if I just copy that, I'll copy it with the comment, why not? Command C to copy, or edit, copy. Here you can see there's that little reminder there, Command C for copy. So I've copied that, and I go back to my other page, my About page, and I just select that and overwrite it with a paste, with a Command V or the paste command under the edit menu. Edit, paste. Okay. So that's now consistent across all of those pages. So if I hit Command R, I go through these pages that I don't have a contact page yet. I will. I can navigate, and that navigation is completely consistent. You see how it doesn't move, doesn't jump about. It's not fancy. It's the opposite of fancy. It's basic, but it works perfectly well, and it's completely accessible too, which is absolutely vital.